Because what that does is it sends this biological panic happening in our brain and body that food must be disappearing from Earth. Our brain does not know that we're doing a juice cleanse, that we're trying to be healthy, that we're trying to lose weight. All it knows is that a vital thing for our survival has been going away. And so it's
Mhm.
going to overeat at any opportunity it can.
Did you know the average woman spends 7 years of her life dealing with period pain? WaveBy believes it's time to get those years back. Founded by an OBGYN, WaveBy is the first science-backed solution that regulates menstrual cycle and reduces period pain before it even starts. WaveBy has 3 products. By Irregularity from WaveBy is designed to help your cycle find its rhythm again. Packed with clinically studied nutrients like inositol, magnesium, and chasteberry, By Irregularity supports healthy ovulation, hormone balance, and smoother, more predictable cycles without prescription or hormones. By Cramps and By Bad Cramps are the proactive premenstrual products that target the prostaglandin messengers that cause cramps and heavy bleeding, so your life doesn't have to stop every month. Think of it as the new Midol, backed by science, built by women, and designed to keep you feeling like yourself. Join the thousands who have already said it's absolutely life-changing, including myself. I've been taking this product every day for nearly 6 months. I take By Irregularity and By Cramps, and it has absolutely reduced my cramping and regulated my cycle. It is super predictable. So head to waveby.co and use the code LindseyCortez for 10% off. Say bye to irregular or painful cycles and hi to your true rhythm. Because when your cycle's in sync, everything else just flows. Lindsey Cortez for 10% off your WaveBy purchase. Fans, listeners, welcome back to another episode of the Female Athlete Nutrition Podcast. I'm here today with a guest, Amber Abila. She is a binge eating expert. Amber helps women stop binge eating and overeating by rewiring their brains so they can feel normal and in control around food for good. After years of trying everything from therapy to intermittent fasting, nothing worked for her until she learned about the psychology of habits, which led her to losing 30 pounds, eliminating food noise, and gaining her life back. She now walks others step by step through her process in her signature Confident Eater program, as well as in her podcast, which is in the top 2% worldwide, called Become a Confident Eater. We've got a free gift for you today. If you head to theconfidenteater.org/urge-guest, you can get instant access to Amber's guided audio, Stop a Binge Before It Starts. And we'll get into more about this. But for those of you who are already resonating as maybe somebody who struggles with binge eating, sometimes when you feel it coming on, popping in those headphones, having a quick guided audio can be so helpful. So I love that idea, and we'll include the link to that and all of Amber's other resources in our show notes. So Amber, welcome to the Female Athlete Nutrition Podcast.
Hi, Lindsay. I'm so excited to be here with you today. Thank you for that beautiful intro and having me on.
Of course. And of course you are coaching other people through this, which is so helpful. And it's also helpful when people have a bit of their own personal story, because then it's like your clients know, oh, you've walked this before too. Now, I think what's interesting about your story that I wanted to start with this and highlight is, right now, you advertise and you talk about binge eating and overcoming that, but it's really becoming a confident eater. And it's because ultimately you didn't just struggle with binge eating. Your story kind of begins a little bit with restriction, and then even bulimia, and then binge eating. So I was wondering if you could just share a bit about kind of the beginning, even though you focus now on like helping people overcome overeating, binge eating, that was kind of the later stage of your personal journey, but there was a lot more to it.
Absolutely. So my journey with binge eating starts how the majority of people I work with does as well, which is this period of restriction. So for me, it started around 2014 when I decided I wanted to lose weight. I was getting older as a teenager and I thought, you know what? I think my hips are getting a little big. It was just a normal part of getting older. But we're taught as women that this is the time where we should really be learning to shrink our bodies down, fit this little mold, And that's just kind of what we're taught that women do. Women diet, they lose weight. That's what our focus is. So I went online, I Googled how do you lose weight, and I found calories in versus calories out. It seems so simple at the start of it. And it was simple in the beginning. I downloaded my fitness pal, I put in my range that I was supposed to be eating, and then I started following it. And I did start to lose weight at first. I will say I didn't necessarily need to lose weight. I was never a like super overweight kid or really struggled with my weight. It was more just the social pressure that started to come in of I
Mhm.
wanted to lose weight because I thought, you know what, more boys would like me. I would be more popular. I would fit in more. So after a couple of months of that, at first I was feeling good. I was losing weight, but then I slowly started thinking about food more and more and feeling obsessed with it. I started researching nutrition obsessively. I went vegan after watching like 5 documentaries in a row about it. And so I started shrinking my food intake more and more, becoming more and more strict until one night, it was around Christmas time, and we had some cookies downstairs. And I promised myself I had been so good, I was just gonna go have one cookie. So I went downstairs, I had that one cookie, and I was flooded with the feeling that I've never felt before in my life up to that point, which was this overwhelming desire to keep eating more. And it felt like I was a ghost in my body where I couldn't stop, I couldn't control myself. And I kept eating until I'd had 7 cookies, which for me at the time was a huge deal. I felt super guilty. I was obviously way past my calorie counts because it was very low at that time. And all I could think about was, I need to do something to fix this. I need to do something to make sure that the scale isn't going to go up tomorrow. So that was also the first time that I purged. So I purged through vomiting, and that went on for about 6 months. I also was purging through over exercising. So I would often go running after either like that night or the next day. I remember there'd be some nights, it would be a school night. I was 15, 16 years old at the time, but I would be going for runs at 10 p.m. for 2 hours because I was trying to get rid of it and trying to make
Oh,
up for it.
yeah.
So after about 6 months of this happening and it continuing to get worse, every time I'd promise myself, "The last time I'm gonna binge, I'm gonna get back on track tomorrow," it just kept happening more and more to the point that it was happening multiple times a week and really starting to impact my life a lot.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
went to the yeah, I went to the first place that most people recommend, which is therapy. And therapy can be useful for a lot of different things. However, in the eating disorder world, especially around binge eating, it's pretty misunderstood. So it did help me a lot with the bulimia. And part of that was because I just recognized how much it was ruining my health. And, I was like, it was a lot of the issues around this came because I wanted to be thin. I wanted to look good in my mind. And so then
Mhm.
I started getting scared of, oh, this is going to be ruining my teeth. This is going to be ruining my gut health and leading to more other things. And so I could see
Yeah.
that with the bulimia, but it didn't really help me so much with the binge eating.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. Like that's where the education piece about like the harms of eating disorders, the harms of throwing up, like that knowledge can be helpful for people to stop some negative behaviors, but it doesn't necessarily create new good behaviors or fully resolve the root problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in therapy, I started to learn a lot about my past, my emotions, starting to just really open up around that. But I still felt like we were going in circles. And the big thing in therapy is it does focus a lot on your past. But for me and for majority of people I work with, there is a small portion where trauma can be an aspect of why their binge eating starts. But for a large portion of people, it's actually just from this period of restriction. And one of the reasons that we'll talk about in a second. But for the majority, there's almost always some bit of restriction happening with there. Because what that does is it sends this biological panic happening in our brain and body that food must be disappearing from Earth. Our brain does not know that we're doing a juice cleanse, that we're trying to be healthy, that we're trying to lose weight. All it knows is that a vital thing for our survival has been going away. And so it's
Mhm.
going to overeat at any opportunity it can. So after going to therapy for about 6 months to a year, I tried even a couple different therapists, and I still wasn't getting help for my binge eating. It still was the same. And in fact, it was often getting worse. I was gaining weight rapidly. I felt really sick all the time because I was just on these blood sugar highs and lows and eating lots of
Yeah.
high sugary, high carb foods. So that's what led me to starting to do my own research on what is binge eating and how does it form and what else can I find about it. And I came across this article one day, and I remember I had searched, like, it was, like, past page 50 of Google, like, I was deep in the rabbit hole, and I came across this blog
I don't know that
post.
I've ever been past page 50 of Google.
Yes, I
Great
was I
math.
could what most people tell you around binging is like, "Okay, you should go to therapy, you should talk to someone about it, you should drink more water, eat more protein." And at that point, I was doing all those things. I
You're
also
doing
had stopped restricting, like, I was eating enough. I was working with a dietitian, and so I was eating meal plans with, like, lots of calories. I think I was eating, like, 2,600 calories, which is, it sounded a lot to me at the time, but is actually, like, a very normal amount. And so anyways, I found this blog post that described how she had solved her binge eating by viewing it as a habit. And she talked about what a habit is, how habits form. And for me, this gave me this huge light bulb moment that
Mm.
was the first step in starting to simplify things for me. Because a lot of times in the eating disorder spaces, it's often looked at as you have this disorder. It's this really big thing that you're gonna have to spend a lot of years solving. And you're gonna have to unearth all this trauma. And that's just, I think, a very outdated model of looking at eating disorders because there's a lot more that we know about the brain and the psychology of eating now that just doesn't really, it's not that the approach is wrong, but it just overcomplicates things and often makes it into a bigger, longer process than it needs to be.
Well, and I think too, I think what works for one person might not always work for another, but what you're expressing, I definitely resonate with as well. That sometimes we go down the rabbit hole of eating disorder recovery and it feels really overwhelming. Oh, this is a disorder. This is something I live with versus what you stumbled upon was this is a habit I can change, which feels
Mhm,
a lot more empowering. It feels like I can do this.
mhm,
And though I'm not going to say one is right, one is wrong, I definitely want people to pick the path that you feel empowered of. I can do this. I found the same in my own as a registered dietitian, sports dietitian, when I was counseling clients on overcoming disordered eating, which could be any of those things we just mentioned. Binge eating, bulimia, anorexia, REDS is something I help with a lot. The unintentional underfueling, just disordered thoughts about food. But I never marketed myself as an eating disorder dietitian, nor am I. There's actually a certification for that, and I'm not certified as an eating disorder specialist. I decided never to go through with the certification because I wanted to treat people coming to see me and say, you can recover from this fast. Like, here's the process, here's the steps. And I always like my process, which I don't do anymore. And we're going to highlight your program. And I'm saying I don't do it anymore because I'm just my business is not in that place right now, but it was very effective of, hey, in 3 months, we're gonna accomplish these things. And although some of my clients still had to unpack some trauma of their childhood after 3 months, so many of their behaviors and habits had already changed in such a quick amount of time. And then it was like, okay, if after 3 months we still have that deeper baggage that is still driving some thoughts, that's when we pursue the the therapy or the eating disorder treatment. But
mhm,
fortunately, our habits and behaviors have already changed. We've already turned our health around. We're already feeling better physically. We already have more confidence because we've gained back control. And I think you mentioned this in your story as well of eating the cookies, the first time that you felt out of control. And this is actually a huge difference that makes binge eating, to include binge eating disorder or overeating even, and the binging aspect of bulimia, so different from other eating disorders is like anorexia or orthorexia, people feel in control. And then with binge eating, we're out of control. We're having this like out of body experience.
mhm,
My brain is disconnected from what I'm doing and
mhm,
engaging in right now, right? It's a very different feeling. So the fact that you can gain like this path that you chose that worked for you as you're talking about, of like I can change my habits, makes you feel in control again. And we're going to tie this right back to your program name and your Instagram name, the confident eater. When you're in control, you feel confident, and that seems to be kind of what really helped you is finding that I have control over this. This is not a disorder that's controlling me. I have control over it.
mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing though I will say that I think runs as a common theme between all of the eating disorders is and just disordered eating in general is this fear around the loss of control, right?
Yeah.
So, we might look at it as the anorexics, they fear being out of control, and so they restrict more. And that when you're struggling binge eating, you fear the loss of control, but that makes you kind of binge more because you're like, I'm scared of, just like losing this control in my life and fighting against that. But it's still kind of coming from a similar place.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and the reason I wanted to highlight this aspect of your story too is just this not deep research, just quickly. This is a 2011 study, but still, I know that's really, really old now in 2026. But this was just quick. I was like, in my work, I've seen so many clients that do kind of like their relationship with food kind of morphs from restriction to now binge eating or whatever it might be. That's happened quite a bit. Or because they were a bit overeating, now they restrict, right? Goes back and forth. And so, super quick, just cherry picking some stats here. So don't be married to these numbers, but between 43 to 62% of individuals with anorexia, the restrictive type, do develop binge eating symptoms. And between 21 to 54% of individuals with anorexia transition to bulimia. So I'm sharing these statistics because, like, anecdotally, I've seen it a lot. And I was just curious. I was like, what's the percentage of this happening? Because it's part of your
Mm.
story too. So if this has happened to you, you're not alone because there can also be a lot of, I know, for people going from like restrictive eating to then overeating, there's, well, with all of this, there can be guilt and shame surrounding all of it, but there's a lot with that. And I'm sure you experienced that too. You mentioned in your bio, like you had gained weight. And then that's this whole thing of like, okay, I'm now nourishing my body and like I'm not being restrictive anymore, but now I'm 30 pounds heavier than I was before, and that can be really disheartening as well and poses a new struggle to all of this. But it was so important, and this is why I'd love to hear how did you at that point in time, like, what were the next steps of I'm going to begin changing my habits and finding confidence in my eating that isn't just going back down this rabbit hole of I need to lose the 30 pounds. Right?
Mhm.
Like, and eventually you did. We already shared that you did, but it wasn't with the intention of weight loss, or you tell me.
Yes, no, it wasn't necessarily. I mean, I wanted to lose weight for a long time, and of course, it's very normal when you're in that space of, I thought the worst thing in the world that could happen is me gaining weight. So when that actually happens and you start to see your body in a different body than you've ever wanted before, there definitely can be a lot of shame around that, a lot of insecurity, and that impacts your life in so many ways. And so there was this desperation to lose weight for a long time. But as I started to learn more about the impacts of restriction on our body and our brain and how we can't get to that point of maintaining our healthy weight if we are continuing to restrict, I started to arrive at this place too. And I tried restricting for so long and I didn't even go into all the things I tried of intermittent fasting and, going back to calorie counting and all kinds of random diets, juice cleanses. Like I tried all of that too. And I kind of hit a point where I was just, even remember writing this in my journal, like before I was writing my journal, I'll do anything to lose weight. And then I was writing, I could care less if this is the body weight that I was at for the rest of my life. All I want is to feel normal around food. Like, I just
Mhm.
cannot go on anymore thinking about food 24/7, stressing about food, about what I ate
Yeah.
last night, what am I gonna eat tomorrow? How are we gonna solve this? I was tired of listening to the podcast about it. I was tired of just
Yeah.
thinking about this as my number one goal for so many years of my life. And I think when you hit that point, it's a hard point to hit because you really feel like you're at rock bottom then. But the beautiful thing about rock bottom is that there's a far way up to go that has so much opportunities waiting
The
for
only way to
you.
go is up. Yep.
Mhm. Yes,
We're gonna
exactly.
start heading up then. We can't keep digging ourselves in this hole of another diet, another cleanse. We've done that. It didn't work. It's not gonna work again.
Yeah.
We have
So
to
once I
climb
had
out.
once I had that kind of insight, that's when I really started to almost let go of this weight loss goal and focus on how can I change my brain and help my health here? And what would that really look like? And the ironic part is, and this is the thing for most of my clients as they start working with me and I tell them, hey, I'm not a weight loss coach, but if you stop binge eating and you're starting to eat more nourishing foods and fueling your body, like your weight's probably, you're at least going to stop gaining weight. And for most people, it starts to trend down again because when you're binge eating, your weight is probably not at your natural weight. And so
Right.
your body wants you to be at your healthy, happy weight. It just needs the right environment to support that.
Yeah, you might need to let go of what you believe your ideal weight should be. But yeah, if you're treating your body correctly, then it will fall in a weight, size, or shape that is natural to it versus the binge eating is an unnatural state because you're doing
Mhm.
things that aren't healthy for your body. So, absolutely. I've seen
Exactly.
that happen over and over again as well. But I think the first step is like, we do have to let go of the weight loss goal, even though there's a
Mhm.
good chance it might happen, but we have to let go of it because we have to let go of the expectation of it and the
Yeah,
pursuit of it.
exactly. Yeah,
Mhm.
so I'll go a little bit more into, like, the actual, like, why the binge eating starts for most people, because I think that'll help people understand how to get
That'd
out
be
of it a
great.
bit more too. So we've touched on restriction a little bit, and I love that statistic that you shared about how, a lot of people who start with anorexia, they'll bounce around. And, we have to think again, like, what's happening in our biology here in our brain from this sense of restriction.
Mhm.
So again, most people will start from this place of cutting calories, and I'll define my definition of restriction is like cutting out calories to the extreme, which to me is more than a deficit of like 1 to 200 calories a day. If you're going beyond that, again, this is not a hard and fast rule depending on your body weight, but for most people, even especially women, even a 500 calorie a day deficit can be too much. And studies have shown that the people who lose weight sustainably long term, that don't harm their metabolism for it, that like do it in a very healthy way, it's usually in a deficit of 1 to 200 calories a day. So
Mhm.
we know that a very small deficit over a long period of time, that's what's sustainable. So any more than that can really create this response in our body of fear that restriction is coming again. And so after a period of restriction, whether that was full blown anorexia or that's just, hey, I went on a juice cleanse once. Hey, I thought I wanted to lose some weight. Hey, I started doing my fitness pal for a little, whatever it is, then what happens is our body is in this state where it's looking for really quick energy because it wants to get as many calories as it can. Most of us, especially in our modern day society, have a lot of access to very quick energy foods in our house. These are the things like ice cream, the chips, the cookies, the bread, whatever. All of these things that we typically binge on. Now, why do we binge on those foods? One, they are more calorie dense. They're also more sugar dense, which is a way for our body to replenish what we're missing very quickly, especially if you are an
Mhm.
athlete. Those things are losing those things a lot quicker. But there's something that's been missing from the conversation that was also a huge part of my journey in understanding why I felt out of control around food and why I was craving these foods even after I stopped restricting them. And that has to do with flavoring. So a lot of people blame sugar, the carbs, these foods, and sugar is a part of this, and I can discuss that a little bit more. But the big thing that's different about our food system today than it was 100 years ago is we have had the introduction of flavorings and these isolated compounds that have been added to our food to allow us to want the food more. Like the companies know what they're doing here. And we know
Mhm.
that this is true because people struggled with eating disorders. Yes, in the past, people struggled with weight in their past, but it is a much smaller percentage. Now, eating disorders is a big part of media culture that influences that as well, and the pressures within that. But as far as obesity goes, you can look at obesity rates from like the 1950s and they are very low. I think it was like under 10%. And then
Mhm.
today having it 30, 40%. And so it's like we have to ask ourselves what's been happening here. It's not just this thing that magically happened. It's not that people just magically stopped managing their emotions or had no emotional skills or got all these traumas. People had traumas 50 years ago, probably even more. They had a lot
Oh,
less access
yeah,
to these
that was post
resources that we
World
have
War
today.
II. Yeah, people had a lot of trauma then.
Right.
Mhm.
So we
Vietnam
know
War
like
was going on 50 years ago. Yeah, yeah. Fans, I'm pausing the conversation again to check in on you. Are you concerned that you have REDS? That's relative energy deficiency in sport. It's a syndrome of not ideal health consequences and performance consequences that all stem from the idea that you're not fueling optimally or fueling enough for your sport needs. I've become an expert in this over the years because unfortunately, a lot of female athletes struggle with this. We have research that shows sometimes up to 90% of female athletes might be suffering from at least one of the side effects of Reds. Other research says that up to 45% of female athletes are struggling with disordered eating. These are big statistical numbers, and I don't like it. I'm here to help you become fierce, fit, and fueled. So first and foremost, head to lindseycortez.com/Reds to learn more about Reds, listen to past podcast episodes, and take our free Reds quiz to see if this might be a concern for you. From there, I've got 3 ways to help you. 1, download the Reds Recovery Guide and start taking action right away. 2, join our Reds Recovery membership. For a very affordable $15 a month, you will have access to me as a sports dietitian to educate and empower you to fuel better. We meet once a week for live calls, Q&A. You have access to the recordings if you can't join live, and a community group chat to support, encourage, and motivate you along the way to fuel fiercely. Last, spots are limited for one-on-one help, but I can help you personally through one-on-one coaching, be it my Fast Track program, the Female Athlete System of Transformation, or perhaps Fuel School, depending on your age. All of that is on my website, lindseycortez.com. But because one-on-one spots are limited, I really want to encourage you to join the Reds Recovery membership. We live in a world where it's very easy to just pop online, read an article, listen to a podcast, and I think we do a decent job at getting information out there, but we all need someone to talk to and really ask those personal questions, and also be open and honest in a community that's going to support you in your fueling needs and goals. And that's exactly what this membership is. So only $15 a month. We meet once a week, and you will be provided with so much education and empowerment and support. I know you won't regret joining. Head to lindseycortez.com/Reds, and there you will see the Reds Recovery membership that you can join, and join us this week. It's time for you to be fierce, fit, and fueled.
So the mainstream approach to overeating is this thought that, oh, we need to manage our emotions more. We have all these things that we need to solve from our past, which again can be a component of it. It's not to say that that's wrong or that's not helpful. I just think it's a much smaller component than most people make it out to be. And the big thing that shifted is when we add these flavorings to our food. So the 4 most common ingredients in the American food system are water, salt, sugar, and natural flavor. The reason that go
Natural
ahead.
flavor.
Yeah, and natural flavor, it sounds so innocent, like it's natural, right? Natural flavors, they're still isolated compounds, so they're not something you could just make in your kitchen. There's something that you have to produce in a laboratory, and the main difference between natural flavors and artificial flavors is artificial flavors are like blue raspberry. You can only create in a lab.
Mhm.
Natural flavors, they're extracted in a lab from
Yeah.
natural compounds, but you can make a strawberry flavor from tree bark. It's a natural
Yeah.
flavor.
Yeah.
So, anyways, the reason that the natural flavors can be a problem and why they can have been increasing our cravings and can make things more hyper-palatable, the problem with them is not that they're causing cancer or that they're ruining your health. That's not the
Safe to
problem.
consume. Yes.
Safe to consume, yes. But the problem is how our brain perceives flavor and how it drives our cravings. So we have to realize at the end of the day, all we are is animals trying to survive. Like, I think
Mhm.
we forget that we think we're all wise and mighty as these humans, but we're just animals trying to survive. We did not survive as humans for tens of thousands of years by just willy-nilly picking up whatever we saw on the ground and putting it in our mouth and eating it. We have certain mechanisms within our body letting us know, we need so many different vitamins every day. So we have to have a mechanism that lets us know, hey, we need more of this vitamin today, or we need more of this vitamin today, or this food is bad to eat. We shouldn't eat that. And how we do that is by flavor. So if you think about in the wild, you eat an orange, it tastes like an orange flavor, and then what happens is vitamin C arrives in your gut. So your brain makes a prediction. It says, oh, if I need vitamin C, I'm going to crave the flavor of orange and I'm going to get that. Now
Mhm.
let's think about if we're eating an orange gummy bear or orange protein powder, we're tasting a really strong flavor of orange, right? Very strong. And so
Yeah.
our brain thinks, wow, we must be getting 100 oranges right now, or we must have found the ripest orange in all of the planets. Like, this is good. This is a really good thing. But
Yeah.
then no orange nutrition arrives in our gut. There's none of those vitamin C or any of those other valuable nutrients. And so our brain gets confused and says, wait a minute, if that strong of a flavor didn't give us any nutrients, we must need even more of that thing in attempt to get it.
Mm.
So how this can play into the restriction part of it. when we're restricting, we also usually have nutritional deficiencies because we're not getting enough of the food that we need. And we're eating these tiny little meals and then binge eating on these hyper palatable foods at night that also don't have very many nutrients. So we're very deficient in nutrients, but we're also not getting maybe enough calories. And so that's making it so these hyper palatable foods to our brain, it says, wow, these gummy bears have everything that I've been needing. Let's get as many of them in as possible right now. So it's
Mhm.
not that your brain is broken or that you have no willpower. It's actually doing a very normal, predicted response to what would happen in the wild hundreds of years ago if you were running out of food and then you came across food that tasted good.
This is so interesting. I didn't know our conversation was gonna go this way, but I first wanna ask you, have you ever read the book called The Dorito Effect? You've
Yes,
read it?
that's it where originally these ideas stem from, yes. It's a great book.
Yes. I actually, full transparency, only read about half of it, which often happens. If it's a novel, I'm gonna finish it.
Yeah,
If
I feel
it's
that.
like a thriller, I'm gonna finish it. If it's a nutrition book, which is what I do, but sometimes I get bored.
Same, I get
But
that.
yes, but so I only read half of it, but it was so eye-opening of like, so the Dorito effect is like all the Dorito flavorings. It's like, here's a
Mhm,
corn chip, but now here's a corn chip that tastes like queso, even though we're not even dipping it in queso, right? And it's like how all those added flavoring. So I first, just to be clear, which you already said, but I'm just going to say it again because my population can be a little sensitive to things like this sometimes, that natural flavorings are safe to consume. They're not creating cancer, they're not
mhm,
toxic to our body, but this is one of those topics that talks about our habits and behaviors, right? And if we get so used to certain flavors and then our brain, like we said, we're eating those flavors and we're not actually getting the nutrition that we need, and our brain is thinking we need more of that. I can absolutely see how this contributes to binge eating, overeating, and also it just gets us out of touch from real food and what real food tastes like. I definitely, there was a time in my life as well where, oh, even I'm going to bring this back to like a sports topic here, of like protein powders, like vanilla
mhm,
flavored protein powders, cookies and cream flavored protein powder, chocolate protein powder, like those flavorings and stuff. And then I'm like, I don't know, but it's like, you know what? I'd rather just have plain yogurt in my smoothie and add cocoa powder to it. Like the
mhm,
real cocoa powder and the yogurt for the protein. And this is not to say there's no place in your diet for protein powder. Maybe there's a place in your diet for Doritos as well, or or an orange gummy bear like you said. There could
mhm,
be a place for it, but it's when we're getting further and further away from real food, we lose that sense of knowing what real food even tastes like, and then your body again is missing out on the true nourishment. So I want to add one more conversation here because it's relevant to my life currently. I'm pregnant at the moment and was talking to one of my best friends who's also a dietitian, but she does very different things. She does weight loss and I do sports nutrition, and I most of my work is helping people gain weight and eat more calories to fuel their sport.
mhm,
And anyways, I was chatting with her and I was like, talking about my pregnancy symptoms, and I was craving chocolate like crazy. And it's that, okay, you're pregnant, you can have chocolate, but then it's also like, no, I'm having cravings. And she was like, are you magnesium deficient? Or how about, your iron needs are increased right now because you're pregnant, right?
mhm,
And I was like, "Yeah," and I started thinking about things. I said, "You know what else? I've been craving molasses as well, which are high iron,
mhm,
magnesium foods, and I was also craving licorice, kind of oddly, magnesium, iron, rich foods." So I put this together and I was like, "Yes, my body, it's not that I needed processed chocolate, it's that I needed iron and magnesium." And so I could have kept eating the chocolate because my body's craving it, or I started making like toast with peanut butter and molasses on it, or
mhm,
obviously eating more beef for my iron levels. And I did, because I'm pregnant, make sure that my supplementation was good as well. And kind of quickly, like within a week, it's like, okay, now I'm back to my normal of I'm craving chocolate because I like the taste of chocolate. And that's something that I often like, but it wasn't this out of control craving anymore,
mhm,
right? It was now, okay, I'm going to choose to have some chocolate because I want to, and not this like I can't stop eating it feeling. Very different.
right,
So I kind of experienced that. I just wanted to share that personal story of like your body is craving the nutrients, not
mhm,
necessarily that flavor, right?
mhm. Exactly. Yeah, but your brain doesn't know, when we don't have this knowledge, it doesn't have the knowledge to know what is in that food or what's not. All it knows is it thinks that that food will have it in it for you. It thinks that, and maybe the chocolate does have some of those things in it, but especially when, like then you think about you have chocolate protein powder. Well, maybe now when you're craving the nutrients you need that might actually naturally exist in chocolate, you're like, oh, I actually want the chocolate protein powder when there's very little chocolate in there. It's just that,
Right.
flavor attached to it. And I
Right.
agree, this is not me. When I learned this stuff too, like, I was very cautious both in my own mind and then also, like, talking about it in the world because there's, like, the stigma and, like, you don't wanna demonize foods, and this is not saying that you cannot have foods
Thank
with
you.
flavorings again, but
Mhm.
it's this you need to have the understanding that if you're someone who's struggling with binge eating, I was so confused for so long
Mhm.
on why does my brain crave these things so much, and this is also another thing. I was eating a lot of diet foods, right? So I started to
Yes.
get, like you mentioned the protein powders. I mean, I was having powders like 3 to 4 times a day, in
Yeah.
my oatmeal, and then I was having a protein bar, and then I was having maybe a protein shake, and then a protein brownie after dinner, and Halo Top, and, all of these sort of diet foods that we think, "Okay, I need to, like." It's kind of this way of, like, trying to, like, I wanna do the binge, I wanna eat all this food and, like, lots of volume of it, but, like, I want it to be low calorie, and so we're trying to, like, fit both of those things, but that
Yeah.
can just confuse our body so much more. This
Mhm.
also gets in the conversation around, like, artificial sweeteners, like, including even things like stevia, which is more natural. The problem with it, though, is when it's so sweet on your taste buds and then no sugar or calories come in from that, again, what
Mhm.
does that mean? Then when you're eating an apple, it's not gonna taste as good anymore. It's not gonna
Yeah.
be as satisfying because your brain thinks, "Oh, well, if that all that sweetness didn't give me any, then I must need to eat even more apples and more of the real foods too in order to get that." So it just leads to a lot of confusion in your body, and when you
Absolutely.
understand that, it's like, I want my body to have accurate signaling. That's why I'm choosing to eat less of these foods, not because I'm bad for eating them or it's wrong, but more I want to rebuild this trust within my body and let it know that it's safe, that I'm getting enough food and it's getting nutritious food that I can actually trust.
I absolutely agree, and I don't think that you're shaming any foods or demonizing any foods by having this conversation. That's not what's coming through to me, and I hope that our listeners hear that as well. It's relearning food and how to fuel yourself. There might be a place in somebody's diet for stevia or Splenda, this or that, but yes, those are sweeter than even real sugar. That's found naturally in fruits or
Mhm,
it's just it's getting back to what do whole foods and real foods even taste like to
mhm,
rewire your brain and train your brain, which then if you're eating more real foods and whole foods, you're hopefully getting more of the nutrients that your body actually needs as well, which can heal some of the physical things like your gut health, like your energy levels. And then if you're feeling better physically and your brain's like, understanding food better, then these cravings or these urges to binge are going to become less and less and less, right?
mhm. Exactly. Yeah, so once we have those, the restriction part of it, which is we're getting more calories, we're getting more nutrients, and I'll also say, and I knew this for athletes too, that when like, let's think about here's how I typically would eat. I would have, like, this tiny little breakfast of, like, yogurt and fruit, and then I'd have, like, a salad for lunch, and then I'd have, like, maybe a grain bowl for dinner, but with, like, a quarter of a cup of grains, and then I'd have this big binge on night on cookies and ice cream and all of these foods. So, I was eating these little portions through the day, and then all this processed food was felt little portion because it was so calorie dense. But
Mhm.
then when I started eating more real foods in amounts that my body actually needed them, it can feel like you're overeating at first. And this is something I often have to work with my clients on is they're like, I feel like I'm eating so much food. Or we have them start eating breakfast because they're not eating breakfast right now. They're like, wow, I just feel like I'm eating a lot. And they get kind of nervous about that. But when you look at it as a whole, when you stop the binge eating at night, because now your body actually has the actual nutrient and feels safe that it's getting regular meals, so it doesn't need to eat just in case. Once it has all of that and you don't have those nighttime binges, your overall calories through the day and through the week are probably going to be a lot less than what it was. And you're eating more food. So it feels like you're being more full. But I just want to, like, remind people that that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong, especially when you're shifting into eating more real meals with actual real foods. You should be feeling full after a meal. Like you should be feeling like I feel full. There's a lot on social media that's like, you should eat till you're like half full or like you want to be able to go run after them. Like, no, you should feel the food in your body. You
Right.
don't need to like lay down and take a nap, but like you should feel
Yeah.
full and satisfied.
Yes, I was there's such a fear of fullness. And like if you people think that if they're full, they overeat. I'm like, no, if you're full, then you ate. Check. Now you can move on with your life. You
Yeah.
can go back to work. You can be present with your kids. You know,
Mhm.
you don't have to think about food anymore. That's something to be happy about, to be satisfied with that I'm full. Now I can be done eating and move on. So yeah, I think that that fear of fullness is such an interesting societal thing going on right now. And so it's good to eat and yes, to your point as well, when people are so used to dieting or like maybe having a meal like that's like 400 calories or this little snack which is a packaged granola bar that's 150 calories, that then when we make a snack that's 400 calories, we have a meal at 650 calories, that can feel like a lot of food, but this is possibly what is actually appropriate for your body. I'm just saying possibly since I assigned
Mhm.
specific numbers there, but this is like normal eating and there can be a transition. I know that that transition period of like I'm eating more during the day, wait, I'm still binging at night. That that can happen for a little bit of time and that can be really scary, but your body will learn. It does.
Mhm.
And is that what you see with your clients too? Do you I'm curious, like, because this is what people fear a lot is like, okay, I'm eating more during the day and I'm still eating a lot at night, or and I'm still binging. Like, is there like a timeline suggestion or like a light at the end of the tunnel? Like, how long is that phase going to go on for?
Yeah, and there can be other reasons for the nighttime eating too. One of the biggest ones is remembering that your brain right now doesn't trust food and it doesn't feel safe
Mhm.
around food. And it hasn't felt that way in probably many years. So when you come to me and you say, wow, like, all right, I'm eating my breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I'm having my snack, I'm eating real whole foods, and I'm still kind of eating some at night, and I've been doing that for 3 weeks. It's like, well, yeah, but like you've been binge eating for the last 10 years and have
Right.
had these
Yeah.
habits and also restricting. And, sometimes you have breakfast and sometimes you don't. And so it takes a while too, we don't know exactly how long, but giving yourself at least a couple of weeks for your brain to recognize food's not going anywhere anymore.
Mhm.
Because even if you stop restricting physically, sometimes there's this mental piece that happens where you still have
Yeah.
these thoughts around, but I should be good tomorrow, but I'm gonna try to eat less tomorrow. Even if you don't actually end up eating less, those thoughts can still perceive in your brain as like restriction is coming, so I'm gonna overdo it now.
Mhm.
So once you heal all of that, like your brain still needs a little time to catch up to what your body is consuming and say, okay, I trust that we're not going to be skipping breakfast anymore. I trust that we're going to be getting enough calories in throughout the day and enough
Mhm.
nutrients. I trust that you're going to feed me. And then there's like the safety piece too of once you're building that up of, I know that I'm not going to restrict again in the future. I'm promising myself that that's not coming. So I don't need to overeat so much at night and I feel safe to now let go of that habit.
Absolutely. And I'm also hearing come through in our conversation from you, there's like a lot of like positive self-talk and mantras that I think can be so helpful in this scenario of even though we're engaging in these actions and behaviors of fueling our bodies appropriately with enough and like real whole foods throughout the day and then using some mantras of like
Mhm.
I trust that this is right for my body. I'm trusting in this process. I'm fueling, I am nourishing. And I've just heard you say in this conversation, like the power of like changing your brain, changing the way you think about food. And
Mhm.
sometimes those literal mantras that you say out loud can be so helpful because maybe an urge still comes on from that like subconscious thought of what we did 1 month ago or what we've been doing for the past 10 years. That's still implanted in your brain, but you have the power to speak positively to yourself and begin putting creating new brain waves of this is what we're doing now. We are fueling and nourishing our body with enough food throughout the day. And again, I'm going to go back to your freebie that we have in the show notes of that audio recording. If you're feeling that urge, come on, pop your headphones in, listen to this audio recording to help guide you through and put new thoughts into your brain because those old thoughts can absolutely linger for quite some time.
Yeah, and Lindsay, I very much address both, like, these biological things and the mindset piece, but I think the mindset piece, we didn't talk about it. I mean, I could talk for hours more on this. I
I
always have
know.
so much to say, but the mindset piece is, if not the I think it's really the most important thing here, right? Because, like, we can do all the things, we can have all this knowledge, we can eat all the right foods, but if we don't have the right thoughts that align with being the confident eater we wanna be, we're not gonna make those changes. So something I do in that guided audio is I actually take you through a visualization of imagining. It's, like, really great for those in those moment urges. So if you're like, I'm someone who really struggles with late night eating, or it just feels like it comes on so quickly and I just wish I had someone to talk me through it. That's exactly why I made the audio. And I walk you through a visualization because visualization is a really powerful tool. It's something that's used by CEOs and athletes. And essentially, your brain doesn't know the difference between something you imagine in depth and something that happens in reality. This is why we can be in our car on the way home having a whole argument with our partner and we show up and we're pissed at them. They didn't do anything, but, like,
Or a dream.
yeah, or dream, yeah, we're, like, so mad because our brain is really good at imagining things and
Yeah.
it's kind of creating that physical response to it even if it didn't happen. So we
Mhm.
can use this to our advantage of imagining ourselves getting through the urge, imagining ourselves coming out on the other side where we feel so proud of ourselves, where we're energized for the rest of the day. We don't have that extra food weighing us down. We're able to sleep better that night. All of those great things, I walk you through visualizing them so your brain really has this blueprint of here's how I want to show up today. And here's all the positive, amazing things that will come when I do that. So definitely a great resource that I'd recommend people checking out.
Amazing. And so share a little bit as we wrap up this conversation just about how people can reach out, which it will be included in show notes, but also what that process of like working with you might even look like.
Yeah, so if you go to my website, theconfidenteater.org, there's information about how to work with me. I have a one-on-one coaching program where we work together for 3 months to really uncover, why are you still stuck binge eating and how can we get you to the place where you can be this normal confident eater who is able to just live their life without having to think about food. So when we work together, we usually cover 3 main skills. I customize it a little bit based on what each person is working on, but we cover emotional eating because that is part of it, and also just learning how to sit with discomfort. That also includes sitting with the discomfort of your urges, which are part of the habit loop that has formed. So that's the first thing we work on. We also work on changing our thoughts around food and how to really feel empowered around eating real foods, not feeling restricted, not feeling like you're depriving yourself, but coming to this place of health from love for ourselves. And then we also touch on the skills of how to listen to your hunger and fullness. This is something that I usually work on with people a little bit more towards the end. I think a mistake I see people making is trying to listen to their hunger and fullness right away from the get go. And when you're binge eating and restricting, especially when you have those two together, there's a lot that can just be a little bit skewed in your body. And so sometimes we need to balance that out a little bit first and get the binge eating underhand, get you in a more regular meal schedule before you really tune in and say, okay, like, what are my hunger and fullness signals saying?
Mhm.
And how can I listen to those?
Yeah, the hunger and fullness signals can be screwed up for quite some time until you start providing the right nourishment and the right
Mhm,
habits into your day, and then you can listen to it. So I love that covering the emotional eating because that can be a driving force to binge eating or just something that honestly people can experience that even without the binge eating. I just think it's an
mhm,
important thing to address.
mhm,
Now, one other quick question is we didn't get a chance to dive into it completely, but what if somebody's listening to you and they're not sure if they fully resonate with like binge eating, but they definitely feel like, well, I definitely like overeat on sweets. Like if they
mhm,
like what's the difference between
mhm.
overeating, binge eating, and could somebody who feels that they struggle with overeating still come to you?
Yeah, great question. I actually used to call myself like an overeating coach, and I said binge eating and overeating, and then I just said binge eating. To me, it's just really semantics. Binge eating is usually a much larger quantity of food that is a bit more out of control in a shorter amount of time. There is a true definition around it. But to me, you're still eating more food than your body needs. It doesn't matter if it's, 2 cookies more or 20 cookies more. The strategies of solving them are usually the same thing. The
Yeah.
main difference of, like, how someone ends up binge eating versus just overeating is usually the degree of hunger they have experienced. So if
Mhm.
you have been on more extreme diets and have restricted more heavily, that usually lends to bigger binges and getting kind of stuck there versus overeating is maybe you haven't dieted so much, but you've just been kind of a part of this food system that has all these additives and has that's kind of confused your body some. You have different mindsets around food. Maybe you still have a dieting mindset around how you eat. And so that might just lead to more overeating because you haven't had as heavy of a restriction background. But again, to solve them is both pretty much the same. You're eating more food than your body needs. And so we'll use similar tools to solve that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like your whole thing is become a confident eater. So if you're currently unconfident in how
Mhm.
you're eating, whatever we label it as, we're going to get you to a place where you are confident in your eating, in the decisions you're making, being around food, because this is something you need for the rest of your life. You need nourishment, you need food every day for the rest of your life. You deserve to be confident in how and what you are eating and treating your body. So,
Exactly.
Amber, thank you so much. The Confident Eater on Instagram, the podcast, Confident Eater podcast, other social media channels like Facebook, YouTube, your free support group, and that free audio recording are listed in our show notes. Thank you so much, Amber, for this conversation and for the great work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. You as well. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed that episode. Please help spread the message of empowering female athletes to be fierce, fit, and fueled by giving this podcast a 5-star review and leaving a comment. You can also help more female athletes by sending this episode to a friend. Head to lindseycortez.com for more resources, information, more episodes, ways to work together, downloadable guides, and ebooks. And if you're interested in becoming a guest on the show or have a guest suggestion, head to lindseycortez.com/podcast, and there's a form for you to fill out to get on the show. Hey, there's more resources on my YouTube channel, Female Athlete Nutrition, Instagram at female.athlete.nutrition, and private Facebook group, Female Athlete Nutrition. I think you get the point. I'm here to support female athletes by fueling better and becoming fierce, fit, and fueled. Most importantly, if you need help, reach out. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next show.